Our Across the Aisle segment tonight, 100 Days of Horror. That's what the New York Times calls President Trump's first 100 days in office. Actually, President Trump hasn't even been in office for 100 days, but liberals already want to paint his presidency as a failure. But this isn't because Trump has been an objectively bad president. It's just because his achievements are upsetting to liberals. With me now, one of those liberals, Democratic strategist Joel Payne. Joel, good to see you.
Hi, from your favorite liberal. How you doing?
You are indeed my favorite liberal. I love having you on the show every week. Joel, I want to propose this to you, that if this president were anyone other than Donald Trump, if even he were one of the other Republican contenders that we saw in the primary last year, this would actually be considered from both the right and the left to be a very successful 100 days. But because liberals, because of partisan politicking, they can't admit that anything Trump has done since January 20th has been right. They don't want him to have done anything right. So I have a challenge for you. I want you to name 3 things that President Trump has done in the last, 80-odd days that you actually agree with.
Wow, that is a challenge. Look, I don't mind giving the president credit, and I've said this to you before. I want our president to be successful. I think any American does, but the success that he is seeking is at the detriment of a lot of Americans. You look at what his budget proposes, the draconian cuts to programs that a lot of people care about. You look at his policy to Syrian refugees that is offensive to so many. You look at the travel ban that is divisive and that's offensive. You look at the failure on healthcare, which even someone like me who, I think Obamacare was great, but I think it can be corrected. I'm disappointed that he couldn't come up with a solution to correct what's wrong with Obamacare and help tweak and help improve it, as all legislation is. So, I'd love to sit here. If you give me some time, maybe I could write you back.
I'll give you some examples because Joel, I love you, but this is a failing grade for my challenge right here. Let me ask you about some things because I really do think there is common ground here. I guess I'm not surprised that liberals and Republicans, at least certain factions of both parties, can't ever agree on something just because of their bickering mindset here. But I think it's in the best interest of our country to do that, to actually come to the middle, meet in the middle sometimes. So let's talk about some of these things that I think, partisan bickering aside, we probably do agree on. In the first 100 days, let's start with sanctuary cities. I know this, in a sense, has been tied to the greater scope of immigration, which Republicans and Democrats don't agree on. But sanctuary cities, 8 in 10 Americans believe that local law enforcement should cooperate with federal immigration officials. 8 in 10. That's not down party lines. That's 80% of Americans. I mean, that's got to be something that you agree with.
Look, I've worked on campaigns. I understand how you poll and how you can poll things to make them come out the way you want to make them come out. I think when you explain to people the sanctuary cities issue, I think people understand the progressive position on that, which is we should not be forcing local authorities to spend money that's earmarked for fighting terrorism and earmarked for city services to go and to find people who are citizens who are just trying to get by, people who are just trying to be our neighbors and to be our fellow worshipers.
That's a complete mischaracterization, I think, of how sanctuary cities work. I mean, that's not at all what it is. It's that local law enforcement ignore the detainer requests from federal immigration officials. These are people, these are not our friends and neighbors who are living otherwise law-abiding lives. These are illegal immigrants who've come to our country, committed crimes, been convicted in our system of justice, served prison time, and then as they're being allowed out, the local law enforcement are ignoring these detainer requests and actually setting them free back on our streets to commit more crimes instead of handing them over to federal immigration authorities. And we've seen the results of that, Joel. We've seen, Kate Steinle in San Francisco, we saw what happened to the girl who was hit by a car driven by an illegal immigrant whose detainer request after he was let out of prison was ignored. That, I think, there's no argument between Republicans and Democrats. This isn't about otherwise law-abiding immigrants. This is about criminals.
Yeah, and we just look at that differently. Look, I don't think anybody thinks that anyone who commits a crime, black, white, Hispanic, born in America, born in another country, they should be prosecuted, they should be found. But that's not what this is about. This is about the type of climate and the type of environment that we want to create. I will also say, too, I think it's interesting. I think you should ask your question to the president, whether he thinks this was a successful 100 days. Steve Bannon and his demotion seems to suggest to me that the president doesn't feel pretty good about these 100 days, considering the fact that Steve Bannon was the chief architect of these first 100 days. And I think the president, his actions show that he is not pleased with it.
Well, there you go. That could have been one of your answers for one of the 3 things that you think he's done a good job with. He already got rid of two of his team members who he didn't like, Michael Flynn and Steve Bannon. I actually don't disagree with you on that. I'm not too unhappy with how that turned out either. Joel, I want to get a couple more of these in, though, before we run out of time here. And that is, the next one is a commission on opioid abuse. I mean, that's a good thing. That's something that's an epidemic in our country. I don't think that's a partisan issue. President Trump's looking into that, how he can solve it. That's good.
Sure, yeah. Look, and you know, there are going to be things that I like and I dislike about any president. There were things that I liked and disliked about President Obama. But I supported the overall arc of the type of society he was promoting. And I don't support the overall arc of the society that Donald Trump is promoting. That's what it comes down to.
Right, it is. It's a philosophical difference. I'm glad at least you are open about what that philosophical difference is. The difference between limited government, where power is given back to the states, back to the people, versus the higher spending, higher tax, larger government, administrative state that President Obama rolled in. I mean, we see the difference in people's lives. I guess I'm not sure how Democrats can still believe in that, how Democrats can still support that when we see that it didn't help people, that people were less safe, less prosperous, less happy, and had less opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you know, you may have been living in a different country the last 8 years, but I felt pretty good about President Obama and the type of society he was fostering and the security he was providing and the type of future he was helped charting for our country. So we just look at things differently. I will say, though, you know, I want the president to take a lesson from these first 100 days in that you cannot govern all the way to one side or to another side. I want him to work with Democrats. I want him to reach out and say, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, you know, let's work together. Let's figure out infrastructure spending. Let's figure out tax reform. Let's figure out an Obamacare fix. I want him to do that.
Right, but last question. We're almost out of time. They're already telling me we're out of time. But how can he do that? How can he reach out to Chuck Schumer when, for example, Chuck Schumer was the one leading the charge against Justice Neil Gorsuch, after the American Bar Association said that Gorsuch was qualified? I mean, it's 2 sides of the same coin. You say that Trump can't govern from one extreme end of the aisle, but if Chuck Schumer is not willing to come to the reasonable conclusion that Gorsuch is a qualified Supreme Court justice, then what purpose does it serve that Trump trying to come to the middle?
Yeah, and I know we're short on time. Senator Schumer took that action because that Gorsuch seat was a stolen seat. Merrick Garland never got
don't
a fair
even
chance
give me
at being
that.
heard. So that's what that is.
No, that's Joel. You're better than that argument. We are out of time. We'll have to pick this up next week. Thanks for being here.